Hello and good morning. I'd like to add my own welcome. I'm Mark Bevan, the COO of Greengage, and obviously not very good with technology. We've heard a lot about energy-related problems in the last week: petrol and diesel shortages, gas prices skyrocketing, protests for home insulation. So here's a fact. Did you know enough solar energy reaches the Earth in 1 hour to meet the entire energy needs of the planet for 1 year? And yet solar power only meets 0.1% of global energy demand. The point is, to dramatically reduce carbon emissions, we need to look around us and use our ingenuity and do things differently, such as we've done with the vaccine and mending the hole in the ozone layer. So we're heading down the road to net zero carbon. The question is, how smooth will that road be? Let's find out. Do you ever feel like this? Everything around sustainability described with jargon and acronyms. If you don't understand all these terms, don't worry, you won't be alone. But given today's topic, I thought I'd explain the difference between these three terms that we hear mentioned a lot. Carbon zero is when no carbon emissions are being produced from a product or service. For example, a wind farm generating electricity. Carbon neutral refers to a policy of not increasing carbon emissions and achieving carbon reduction through offset, e.g. Shell with their carbon neutral fuel initiative, or EasyJet offsetting flights. Net zero carbon means making changes to reduce carbon emissions to the lowest amount and then using offsetting after all reduction initiatives have been implemented. For most businesses, net carbon zero is the one to aim for. An example is the UK government, who's committed to legally binding target of net zero emissions by 2050. Carbon offsetting is a completely different subject. And if you do like to hear more, then do email me. My email is in my booth. I thought it would be worth showing a global view of what economic sectors contribute to CO2 emissions in order. Electricity and heat, then agriculture and forestry, industry, transportation, other energy and buildings. And if we zoom right in to look at the UK household emissions, in the UK, they represent around 40% of total emissions. In recent years, made up of transport, heating, electricity, aviation and waste. It does show that being sustainable does really start at home. In 2030, household emissions are expected to be less, but the mix changes. Transport should go down with more efficient cars, as does electricity with high renewable levels. More recycling helps reduce waste figures. Heating remains high until better tech is installed in homes, and aviation as a percentage is higher until things like electric or hydrogen planes are on the scene. So how are we getting on with reducing greenhouse gases that are driving global temperatures to rise to dangerous levels? For many years, going back to the early part of the 21st century, scientists have warned about looming climate disaster, and no one really listened. Well, now most of us are listening. The problem is we wasted a lot of time, and that means now we have to act quicker and more dramatically, reducing CO2 levels by 50% by 2030 to hit net zero by 2050. And it won't be easy. Robert Swan, polar explorer, once said, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it." We are now at a point approaching irreversible damage, and it means that every nation, every government, organisation and individual has to play their part. "2021 needs to be a year of action, and the Glasgow COP26 Climate Change Conference in November provides a perfect focal point to set the agenda for the next 9 years and beyond. Here's the agenda. For nations to come together and find ways of achieving net zero by mid-century and limiting goal temperatures increases to a maximum of 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. The eyes of the world will be on Glasgow, and the background is that on current trajectory, CO2, rather than decreasing by 50%, is set to rise by 10%, and temperatures could rise between 2 and 4 degrees. The hope is to agree a legally binding framework of measurements that gets us to a better place. Let's move this on to what this all means in the corporate world for business. Companies and organisations are taking sustainability very seriously. It's not just because they want to help the planet. There are sound commercial reasons for taking a greener route. We are seeing more and more organisations committing to net zero targets. All of these have done so. There are many more. AstraZeneca are looking to be zero carbon by 2025 and actually net negative carbon zero by 2030. There's lots of different areas that actually will make a business's CO2 up, which we will cover. One of them is travel and transport. Another large one is obviously energy. We recently looked at travel and transport because it's something most businesses actually do. And it does vary between businesses. If you're a mining business, you might not travel much. If you're a consulting business, you could be traveling domestically or globally on a regular basis. Here are the results of the 2021 Business Travel News Survey, which interviewed travel buyers from an insight into corporate attitude towards sustainability. So the pressure is coming from a moral point of view, through government legislation and through supply chain. Your clients may well expect you to document and demonstrate how you aim to reduce carbon emissions to get to carbon zero. Let's talk about what you need to do, and this is just a quick overview. Two stages is my advice. My advice is to plan a net zero route for your own company, and then you can then plan what you do to help your supply chain. For example, UK government procurement is now stipulating that organisations with government contracts must have measured their carbon footprint and have a roadmap to net carbon zero. So I'd recommend every business does what it can to reduce emissions and act greener. Here are some suggestions and steps. Take stock of where you are now. Set some high-level goals, like which year you intend to get to net zero carbon. Measure your carbon footprint and review it each year. Identify both quick wins and longer-term plans on a journey to zero. Regular review and measurement of progress. Greengage is here to help. We come out, we review your business. We've got a very quick, simple process, and we've got carbon calculators to measure where you are today. These are the 6 steps that we recommend, and I'll run through each one step by step. We would suggest setting yourself goals, so you can actually start to set your own measurements once you've set your own goals. Make them achievable. Even with the government, they're saying net carbon zero by 2050. There is time to do this. Everything doesn't have to be done tomorrow. Expectations, helping to manage sustainable has to be really realistic setting of expectations. So just look at where you are today, press the button, reset everything, and come up with your own plan that we can support you with. We also say look at substitutions. I've picked on travel here. Through the pandemic, obviously travel was stopped, but it was an area that we was very interested in, and we actually diversified and pivoted into helping corporates when travel stopped during the pandemic. But it's a good illustration of how you can substitute. Substitution is not all about reducing travel, it's about providing travellers with greener options, giving them the information they need to make informed greener decisions, especially at time of booking. I saw today that Google now are actually putting in, when you search something, they'll offer you a green hotel or green alternatives to travel. Need to have visibility of accurate CO2 emissions, understand e.g. difference between flying to Paris and going by Eurostar. Quite interestingly, if you do fly to Paris or go by Eurostar, if you go by Eurostar, it's actually 1/10 of the carbon that you'd actually use. So maybe having a green travel policy within your business is very key. So winning hearts and minds of your staff and your teams is actually very important. Get your staff to have input, have a green champion maybe, and share progress through dashboards and encourage feedback. Offsetting. I would suggest that only look at offsetting when you've actually reduced your carbon, because you really don't want to start to pay to offset things where you can actually make changes and change behaviours before you start to pay for things. It's important to choose good partners around you. So choose experts that have helped people actually through other journeys, make sure that they've got the right credentials, and sometimes make sure you've got some independent advice around these areas. So this is a really nice business. It's the Treehouse Hotel in London, and they really did go the extra mile, and they're a partner of ours. And everything in their business is actually really built on recycled products. All their energy is renewables and things like that. So we can give you an in-depth overview what other businesses have done. And they did. They calculated where they are, they reduced, and then they offset what they couldn't use. And most businesses are going to be in the same position. You won't be able to completely get rid of carbon. You will have to offset at some stage. So, whether it's energy, whether you're producing, whether it's food and beverage or travel and transport, there's ways of actually reducing. And I think today's a really good example. We're all here at a virtual conference, and we're all actually reducing carbon by attending this virtually today. I think conferences like this one today, there will be a mixture going forward of more and more virtual. There will also be hybrid, a mixture of people in rooms and virtual, and then there'll be the regular meetings. So I think it just shows that you can do things like we are today. Excuse the tech issues earlier. So when you've actually been down your green journey, you know, you really do need to shout about it. It really gives you a competitive advantage, and it lets people know what you're doing. Your sustainability and carbon net zero journey should definitely qualify for a page on your website. Make the most of social media, things like LinkedIn. Your customers really want to know about it. So there it is, some background and tips on embracing the route to carbon net zero. Thanks for your time.